Welcome to this audiobook presentation of The Art of War, the timeless masterpiece of strategy and wisdom written over 2,000 years ago by the ancient Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu. Though written in a time long past, The Art of War remains profoundly relevant today, transcending the battlefield to offer insights into leadership, decision-making, and competition in all areas of life, be it business, sports, politics, or personal growth. This book is not just about war in the conventional sense. It is a guide to understanding conflict itself, how to anticipate it, manage it, and ultimately overcome it with minimal destruction. Sun Tzu teaches us that the greatest victory is one achieved without fighting, where intellect, preparation, and strategy outmatch brute force. Within these pages you will discover wisdom that has shaped generals, emperors, and leaders throughout history. You will learn how to assess and adapt to changing circumstances, use knowledge and deception as powerful tools, recognize the importance of terrain and timing, harness the psychology of your adversaries and allies, and most importantly, lead with clarity, discipline, and vision. The Art of War is divided into 13 chapters, each focusing on a critical aspect of strategy, from planning and tactics to the use of spies and managing terrain. Together, these teachings form a complete philosophy of conflict and resolution. As you listen, consider how these principles might apply beyond the battlefield. The challenges we face in everyday life often mirror the strategic dilemmas of war. The ability to think several moves ahead, to understand opponents and allies alike, and to remain calm under pressure are skills that benefit us all. Whether you are a student of history, a leader seeking guidance, or simply someone interested in timeless wisdom, this audiobook will take you through the profound teachings of Sun Tzu delivered chapter by chapter with clarity and insight. Prepare to embark on a journey into the mind of one of history's greatest strategists. Let the art of war inspire you to approach challenges with foresight, courage, and intelligence. Now let us begin. Chapter 1 is titled, Laying Plans. This chapter opens with a clear warning. War is a matter of life and death, of survival or ruin. It cannot be approached lightly. Every decision must be preceded by deep thought, evaluation, and comparison. Sun Tzu introduces 5 timeless pillars upon which every strategy must rest. The moral law. This is about unity. Are the people aligned with their leader? Do they trust him enough to follow into the unknown? Without this harmony, no army or society can endure hardship. Heaven, a metaphor for all things outside human control, the seasons, the weather, the timing of events. Victory often belongs to the one who knows how to wait and when to strike. Earth, the physical world, terrain, distances, obstacles, and geography. Every battlefield has its secret paths and dangerous traps, waiting only for a mind sharp enough to see them. The commander, beyond titles and ranks, a true leader must possess 5 virtues: wisdom to foresee, sincerity to gain trust, benevolence to inspire loyalty, courage to act, and discipline to maintain order. Method and discipline. The final pillar speaks to organization, the structure of your forces, the clarity of your plans, and the strength of your communication. Without method, even the bravest army will fall to confusion. Sun Tzu says that before battle, these factors must be carefully compared between both sides. A wise general can predict success or failure based not on hope, but on reason. But what separates a good strategist from a great one is this: all warfare is based on deception. Victory, in its highest form, is invisible. The greatest wins are those in which the enemy never fully understands what has happened, until it's too late. Appear weak when you are strong. Act slow when you are fast. Hide your purpose behind distractions. Let your opponent step into the trap of their own assumptions. The general who deceives, adapts, and prepares wins without wasting strength. And in closing, Sun Tzu offers a powerful truth. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, For every victory you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither yourself nor the enemy, you will succumb in every battle. This chapter teaches us that true victory begins long before any action is taken. It begins in understanding, in planning, and in mastering both ourselves and the world around us. The second chapter is titled, Waging War, and it's not just about fighting. It's about what it takes to sustain a fight, and what it costs to win. War, Sun Tzu says, is not a romantic endeavor. It is expensive. It consumes supplies, time, energy, and most critically, human lives. So the first warning he gives is this. When you engage in actual fighting, if victory is long in coming, then men's weapons will grow dull, and their ardor will be damped. In other words, if the battle drags on, morale dies. And when morale dies, the army begins to rot from within. Not only are weapons worn down, but the spirit of the soldiers begins to crumble. Victory grows distant, and defeat begins to loom. Sun Tzu emphasizes that speed is the lifeblood of effective warfare. A swift campaign reduces cost, conserves resources, and limits casualties. That doesn't mean rushing in blindly. It means striking with focused precision when the moment is right. Prolonged conflict leads to exhaustion, not only for soldiers, but for the entire state. The economy suffers. Food becomes scarce. People grow restless. A war that lasts too long destroys the nation it's meant to protect. So what's the alternative? Sun Tzu advises a strategic approach to supplies and sustainability. Rather than carrying everything from home, he says a wise general feeds his army from the enemy's resources. Captured supplies should be used. Horses, grain, weapons, everything should be repurposed to reduce burden and increase strength. This isn't just a military idea, it's a lesson in efficiency and adaptation. He says, when you capture more supplies from the enemy than you consume from your own stock, your strength grows while your opponent's weakens, and there's more. Sun Tzu speaks of the psychological warfare in capturing the enemy's spirit. He says that when you take prisoners, treat them kindly. Feed them. Integrate them into your ranks if possible. Not only does this grow your numbers, but it breaks the will of the opposing side. You win not only by defeating their army, but by absorbing their power and undermining their will. Another striking idea in this chapter is that war is not the goal. Victory is. And even victory should be pursued with the least destruction possible. The truly skilled general seeks to subdue the enemy without unnecessary bloodshed. Why? Because destruction is wasteful, and waste weakens the victor just as much as the defeated. Every coin spent, every life lost, every day dragged out, has a cost. A wise ruler should always weigh whether the goal justifies the price. This chapter reinforces one timeless truth: the longer a conflict continues, the less likely victory becomes. Therefore, success lies in striking fast, striking smart, and striking when your enemy is weakest. War is expensive, economically, physically, and emotionally. It should never be entered lightly, and never prolonged unnecessarily. Speed wins battles. Not careless speed, but decisive, planned momentum. The longer the war, the more likely it turns against you. Use enemy resources, conserve your strength, by turning the enemy's supplies into your advantage. This drains them while empowering you. Kindness as strategy. Treat prisoners well. Absorb them when possible. A moral strategy strengthens your side and demoralizes your foes. Avoid unnecessary destruction. The greatest victories come with minimal loss. A burned village or a ravaged field is a burden to the victor as well. Victory is the goal, not battle. War is a means to an end, not the end itself. The best wars are the ones that end quickly and decisively. In this chapter, Sun Tzu is not glorifying war. He's warning us of its weight. War, when necessary, must be waged wisely. It must be fast, efficient, and deeply calculated. Otherwise, even victory will taste like loss. So before you choose to fight, whether on a battlefield, in a boardroom, or in life, ask yourself, can I win this quickly? Do I know what it will cost? And am I prepared to pay that price? Because once the war begins, the clock starts ticking, and every second counts. Chapter 3. Attack by Stratagem. In this chapter, Sun Tzu presents one of his most powerful ideas. The highest form of warfare is defeating the enemy without fighting at all. He begins by outlining a hierarchy of victory. The best strategy is to break the enemy's resistance without battle. Next is to disrupt their alliances. Third is to attack their armies directly. The worst option is to lay siege to walled cities, which consumes time, energy, and morale. Sieges are destructive, wasteful, and often unnecessary. A wise general avoids them by choosing clever alternatives. Sun Tzu introduces the importance of strategy over brute force. He explains that successful warfare depends on the ability to outthink the opponent, not just overpower them. To him, warfare is a mental game played at the highest level. Victory, he says, comes from knowing when to fight and when not to. It comes from understanding yourself, your enemy, and the conditions of the moment. He writes, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you will not be imperiled in 100 battles." This chapter also speaks about the structure of command. There are 5 key traits a general must avoid, as each can lead to disaster. Recklessness, which leads to destruction. Cowardice, which leads to capture. A hot temper, which can be provoked. A sense of honor that is too sensitive, which leads to shame and hasty action. Excessive compassion, which may keep a general from making hard decisions. Sun Tzu stresses that the ideal general is calm, cunning, and emotionally disciplined. His goal is not glory, but efficient victory. He also introduces the idea of calculating outcomes based on strategic variables: strength, leadership, terrain, morale, and organization. With these in mind, one can predict the likelihood of victory. Essence, Chapter 3 teaches that true strength lies not in destroying your enemy, but in mastering the art of maneuver, timing, and restraint. The most celebrated victories are those that require no battle at all, only brilliance. Chapter 4. Tactical Dispositions. Sun Tzu now shifts focus from how to conquer enemies to how to prepare oneself for invincibility. He begins with a paradoxical truth. To secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. This means that while you cannot force a victory, you can ensure that you are never defeated. How? By building an unshakable foundation, strategic, emotional, and structural. Your preparation, not your aggression, becomes your greatest weapon. In this chapter, Sun Tzu emphasizes defensive wisdom over offensive ambition. A wise general is not constantly seeking battle. Instead, he first establishes a strong position, one so secure that defeat becomes impossible. Only then does he look for an opening to strike. He compares the art of war to water, formless, adaptable, and patient. Water finds the cracks. In the same way, a skilled commander studies the enemy for gaps, weaknesses, or patterns of complacency, and strikes only when success is inevitable. This leads to one of the most profound ideas in the entire book. Victorious. Warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. It's not just about reacting well during a battle. It's about ensuring victory before the battle even begins. Sun Tzu then outlines the nature of strong positions. They are based not only on physical geography, but on moral clarity, solid discipline, and thorough planning. A tactically superior force doesn't necessarily mean one with more soldiers. It means a force that has mastered organization, timing, and adaptation. He also introduces the principle of formlessness. To win consistently, never become predictable. Keep your intentions hidden. Be as fluid as possible. The moment your enemy can anticipate your next move, your advantage begins to vanish. In summary, Chapter 4 teaches that war is won not on the battlefield, but in the invisible work of preparation and awareness. The one who waits in strength while the other stumbles forward in overconfidence, that is the one who cannot be overcome. Chapter 5. Energy, also translated as strength or momentum. In this chapter, Sun Tzu explores the dynamic power of energy, coordination, and rhythm in warfare. He begins by distinguishing between two kinds of military force: direct, zheng, the straightforward, predictable move; indirect, qi, the surprising, unorthodox maneuver. Victory, he teaches, comes not just from brute strength but from knowing how to alternate between these two. When used correctly, the direct force fixes the enemy in place, while the indirect force delivers the decisive blow. Sun Tzu writes, "In battle, there are not more than two methods of attack, the direct and the indirect. Yet these two in combination give rise to an endless series of maneuvers." This concept is like music. Only a few notes, yet infinite compositions. It's not about having countless tools. It's about using the few you have with timing, balance, and momentum. He then introduces the idea of controlled chaos. On the surface, a battle might seem noisy, disorderly, and wild, but underneath, a masterful commander moves every unit with purpose. What seems spontaneous is actually deeply calculated. A good general, Sun Tzu says, knows how to organize confusion to make it serve him. He positions his army like a bowstring drawn tight, still and quiet, until it's time to release energy in a sudden focused strike. He also uses the metaphor of rolling logs or stones down a mountain. Their power doesn't come from themselves alone, but from the height, momentum, and gravity. The wise commander doesn't just throw troops forward. He creates momentum, harnesses terrain, and uses the enemy's position to increase his own force. In war, timing and rhythm are everything. A slow army can be crushed by a smaller but faster one. An impatient attack can collapse when it hits a hidden defense. Sun Tzu teaches that true strength lies not just in the soldiers or the weapons, but in the commander's ability to harmonize the whole, to build pressure quietly, then release it all at once like thunder after stillness. So in summary, energy, in the art of war, is not raw force. It's the precise application of movement, order, and surprise. Direct and indirect. Motion and pause. Preparation and release. Like a master conductor, the general controls chaos until it becomes a crushing, unstoppable force. Chapter 6. Weak Points and Strong In. This critical chapter, Sun Tzu reveals how the essence of military strategy lies in the ability to discern weakness and strength, both in the enemy and in oneself. He begins with a powerful idea. Whoever is first in the field and awaits the coming of the enemy will be fresh for the fight. Whoever is second in the field and has to hasten to battle will arrive exhausted. This isn't just about physical arrival, it's about mental and tactical readiness. To be first is to choose the battleground, to frame the encounter on your own terms. To be second is to react, to follow someone else's rhythm. The lesson, initiative wins wars. Sun Tzu then dives into one of the central laws of conflict. Appear where you are not expected. He stresses that a strong army is like water. It avoids what is hard and strikes what is soft. Water adapts to the shape of the land. In the same way, a wise general adapts to the shape of the enemy. This chapter teaches that warfare is not about clashing head-on. It is about studying the enemy's formations, finding the soft spots, the overconfident positions, the neglected flanks, and striking precisely there. Sun Tzu writes, "An army may march great distances without distress, if it marches through country where the enemy is not. This means, do not confront strength with strength. Move where you are not expected. Attack what is undefended. Draw the enemy out of position, then strike." He warns that the enemy's strength can also become their weakness when they become overconfident, predictable, or rigid in their thinking. In contrast, your own army must remain formless, adaptable, and always observing. The goal is simple: Make the enemy reveal himself while keeping your own intentions hidden. This chapter also discusses illusion and deception. When you are near, make the enemy believe you are far. When you are far, make him believe you are near. When you are weak, appear strong. When you are strong, appear weak. This isn't trickery for its own sake. It is about creating opportunities. The enemy who sees you clearly will defend effectively. But the enemy who is confused, uncertain, and constantly adjusting to your illusions, he is already halfway defeated. Sun Tzu also teaches the importance of fluidity. Avoid predictability. Never attack in the same manner twice. Shift patterns. Keep the enemy reacting, guessing, doubting. In one of the most poetic lines, he writes, "Shape your forces like water, flowing into the empty spaces of the enemy." To summarize Chapter 6, never meet strength with strength. Use misdirection to create confusion. Strike where the enemy is unprepared. Adapt like water, never fixed, always flowing. Victory belongs not to the one with the bigger army, but to the one who knows where to look for weakness and how to strike with precision. Chapter 7, Maneuvering. By now, Sun Tzu has taught us the value of preparation, deception, and adaptability. But in Chapter 7, he brings our attention to something equally crucial: movement. Not just movement for the sake of motion, but strategic, purposeful maneuvering. He opens the chapter by warning of the dangers of action without calculation. 2. Frequent rewards indicate that the general is at the end of his resources. Too frequent punishments that he is in acute distress. In simple terms, if a leader constantly motivates with bribes or threats, it means he has lost control. True leadership and true maneuvering comes from discipline, structure, and inner confidence. Sun Tzu then discusses the real cost of movement, not just in energy, but in morale. Marching a great army across vast distances over dangerous terrain requires more than logistics. It requires wisdom. One wrong step can lead to exhaustion, ambush, or disarray. He writes, "We are not fit to lead an army on the march unless we are familiar with the face of the country, its mountains and forests, its pitfalls and precipices, its marshes and swamps. This is both literal and metaphorical. A commander must know the terrain, not just the physical land, but the emotional terrain of his soldiers, the mental terrain of his enemies, and the political terrain of alliances. Maneuvering is about more than choosing a path. It's about choosing the right time, speed, and formation. Move too slowly and you give your enemy time to regroup. Move too quickly and you risk arriving tired and exposed." Sun Tzu introduces the concept of difficult ground, areas where your army is vulnerable. On such ground, your enemy may try to provoke you into attacking rashly. But the wise commander knows, never fight on ground the enemy has chosen. He advises this key strategy. Do not advance relying on the likelihood of the enemy not coming, but on your own readiness to receive him. Do not count on the enemy not attacking, but on your own unassailable position. This is a recurring theme in the art of war. Victory does not come from predicting the enemy, but from preparing yourself so thoroughly that the enemy cannot harm you, no matter what they do. Sun Tzu also gives tactical advice. Use local guides. Keep soldiers rested and supplied. Avoid areas where your army is stretched thin or trapped. Know when to retreat and how to do it without chaos. One particularly striking part of this chapter is when he says, "Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt." This is the heart of maneuvering. Conceal your intentions, then strike with sudden speed and force. Confuse the enemy with silence, then overwhelm him with action. Movement becomes a weapon, a dance of anticipation and surprise. In summary, Chapter 7 teaches us that maneuvering is not just about movement, but mastery of space and time. A successful commander moves with knowledge, patience, and restraint. The best movement is invisible until it becomes unstoppable. This chapter reminds us that victory doesn't always belong to the strongest force. It belongs to the force that knows where it is, where it's going, and how to get there, without being seen. Chapter 8. Variation in Tactics. In this chapter, Sun Tzu addresses one of the most challenging aspects of leadership and warfare, the ability to adapt your tactics to changing circumstances. He begins by acknowledging a simple truth. In war, the way is to avoid what is strong and to strike at what is weak. But how do you do this when the battlefield and the enemy are constantly shifting? The answer lies in flexibility and variation. Sun Tzu warns against rigid thinking and fixed strategies. A plan that worked yesterday may fail disastrously tomorrow if the situation has changed. Therefore, a wise commander must be like water, fluid, adaptable, and constantly changing shape to fit the container. He writes, "If the enemy leaves a door open, you must rush in." This means seizing opportunities immediately when they appear. But those opportunities are rarely obvious. They require sharp observation and quick decision-making. Sun Tzu also explains the dangers of predictable tactics. Therefore, those skilled in war bring the enemy to the field of battle and are not brought there by him. By varying your tactics, sometimes bold, sometimes subtle, you keep the enemy guessing. You deny them the chance to prepare or respond effectively. This chapter highlights several important principles. Avoid repeating the same tactics. Unpredictability is a weapon. Know when to attack fiercely and when to withdraw quietly. Use both direct and indirect methods strategically and interchangeably. Sun Tzu emphasizes the importance of knowing your army well, its strengths, weaknesses, and morale, so you can apply the right tactics at the right time. He also stresses knowing the enemy's tendencies to exploit any hesitation or overconfidence. One of the most practical lessons in this chapter is, when the enemy is relaxed, make them toil. When full, starve them. When settled, make them move. This is about controlling the rhythm of battle, never letting the enemy get comfortable or confident. Constant pressure, changes, and surprises wear down the opponent both physically and psychologically. Variation in tactics also means understanding when to engage in open battle and when to use subterfuge, sabotage, or psychological warfare. Sun Tzu reminds us that success in war comes from flexibility of mind and action. No single strategy works all the time. Victory belongs to the one who can read the ever-changing conditions and respond accordingly. To summarize Chapter 8, be unpredictable and flexible. Vary your tactics constantly. Exploit enemy weaknesses by adjusting your approach. Keep the enemy off balance and under pressure. Understand your own forces and adapt to their capabilities. In essence, this chapter teaches that rigidity leads to defeat, while adaptability ensures survival and victory. Chapter 9. The Army on the March In. This chapter, Sun Tzu focuses on the practical realities of moving an army through unfamiliar territory, a challenge that tests leadership, discipline, and knowledge. He opens with a fundamental principle. When an army marches through hostile country, it is inevitable that there will be hardships. The march is more than just physical movement. It is a test of the general's ability to maintain order, morale, and awareness. The terrain, the weather, and the enemy's potential ambushes all create dangers. Sun Tzu offers detailed advice on how to read the signs of the land and the behavior of the enemy. Observing the footprints of the enemy. Fresh, deep marks mean a large, possibly strong force. Scattered, faint tracks suggest weakness or retreat. Watching the dust and smoke. Dust clouds might indicate troop movements. Smoke can signal camps or fires. Listening for sounds. The noise of animals, voices, or weapons can reveal hidden positions. These observations are vital for anticipating attacks or finding safe routes. He also stresses the importance of discipline and order in the march. The good fighters of old first put themselves beyond the possibility of defeat, and then waited for an opportunity to defeat the enemy. This means a well-organized march ensures the army is prepared and protected, minimizing vulnerability to surprise attacks. Sun Tzu describes different types of terrain and their impact on the army's safety and mobility. Easy ground, wide open, and safe for marching. Entangling ground, difficult terrain like forests or marshes where formations can break. Desperate ground, places where retreat is impossible and the army must fight or perish. On desperate ground, the soldiers fight with great courage because they know there is no option but victory or death. He warns generals not to be careless when choosing paths. Do not march twice over the same ground, because soldiers may grow too familiar and careless. The chapter also highlights the psychological effects of the march on soldiers. A tired or hungry army is vulnerable to panic and defeat. Sun Tzu advises commanders to keep troops well fed and rested, avoid unnecessary battles while on the march, use scouts and spies to gather intelligence continuously. The overall message is clear. Success in war requires more than strength in battle. It requires mastery of movement, terrain, and logistics. To summarize Chapter 9, study the terrain carefully and adapt your march accordingly. Maintain discipline and readiness at all times. Use observation and intelligence to anticipate enemy actions. Understand the psychological and physical state of your troops. Choose your paths wisely to avoid traps and ambushes. This chapter reveals that the march is a test of strategy as much as the battle itself, and careful preparation here can decide the fate of an entire campaign. Chapter 10. Terrain. In this chapter, Sun Tzu delves deeper into the vital importance of understanding the terrain on which battles are fought. Terrain isn't just the physical ground beneath an army's feet. It shapes the entire strategy, influencing movement, defense, and attack. Sun Tzu classifies terrain into 6 types, each with unique challenges and opportunities. Accessible ground. This is easy terrain where both sides can move freely. The key here is to control the best positions quickly and avoid being outmaneuvered. Entangling ground. Difficult terrain like forests, marshes, or narrow passes that can trap an army or break its formation. Commanders must be cautious and maintain tight control to prevent disorder. Temporizing ground. Areas where an army may want to delay action or wait for reinforcements. Control of these grounds can buy crucial time. Narrow passes. Choke points where a smaller force can hold off a much larger one, defending or attacking. These requires careful planning and use of the terrain. Precipitous ground. Dangerous cliffs or steep slopes that pose risk to troops. They can be used to trap or surprise the enemy, but are also risky for one's own forces. Difficult ground, terrain that is hard to traverse, like swamps, dense forests, or rugged mountains. Armies must avoid getting bogged down or cut off. Sun Tzu stresses the importance of positioning in relation to these terrains. The wise general uses terrain to strengthen defense, limit enemy options, and create opportunities for ambush or surprise. He warns that ignorance of terrain leads to disaster. Whoever knows the terrain and the enemy will win every battle. This statement summarizes the key to victory: knowledge and preparation. The chapter also discusses the use of high ground and fortifications. Controlling hills or mountains can give a tactical advantage, allowing forces to see the enemies, approach and defend more effectively. Sun Tzu advises commanders to take advantage of natural obstacles to protect flanks. Avoid difficult terrain when on the offensive unless it offers a clear strategic benefit. Force the enemy into terrain unfavorable to them. He also highlights the role of surprise and deception connected to terrain. A general who can hide movements or exploit hidden paths gains the upper hand. In summary, Chapter 10 teaches us terrain is a fundamental factor that shapes strategy and tactics. Understand and classify the terrain before making any decision. Use terrain to defend, attack, and deceive. Control key positions like high ground and passes. Adapt your strategy continuously based on terrain conditions. This chapter reminds us that war is not just about brute strength, but about mastering the land itself, turning nature into an ally rather than a hazard. Chapter 11. The 9 Situations. Chapter 11 is one of the most detailed and strategic parts of the art of war. Here, Sun Tzu breaks down the battlefield into 9 different types of situations or ground, each requiring its own unique approach. Understanding these situations allows a commander to choose the best tactics to win, because the key to victory lies not just in strength, but in reading the circumstances wisely. Let's explore these 9 situations one by one. Dispersive ground. This is where an army is close to its own territory and support. Soldiers are relaxed and tend to want to return home quickly, which can make discipline difficult. Commanders must maintain strict control and focus to prevent desertion or loss of will. Facile ground that can be easily traversed and left. Soldiers feel confident and comfortable here, but this can breed carelessness. The leader should keep the troops alert and ready for sudden action. Contentious ground. This is land everyone wants to control because of its strategic value, perhaps a river crossing or a vital supply route. Fighting here is fierce because both sides know the importance of holding this ground. Open ground that both armies can freely access and leave. Here, victory depends more on tactics and morale than on geography. Intersecting groundland. Where multiple routes or alliances intersect. Control of this ground means controlling communications and reinforcements. Serious ground far from home base and deep in enemy territory. Here supply lines are long and morale can drop. The army must be careful as retreat may be difficult. Difficult ground-harsh terrain like mountains, forests, or swamps. Movement is slow and dangerous, and the army is vulnerable to ambush. Hemmed-in groundland where the army is trapped with limited space to maneuver. In this situation, soldiers fight desperately as their survival depends on victory. Desperate ground, where the army has no choice but to fight fiercely for survival. There is no retreat. This is the ultimate test of courage and will. Sun Tzu explains that each type of ground demands a different command style and tactical response. A general who can read these situations and adjust accordingly will survive and triumph, while one who fails to do so will be defeated. He writes, "To fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting." This means that understanding ground can help avoid battle altogether by positioning and maneuvering so effectively that the enemy is forced to surrender or retreat. This chapter is also a lesson in psychology, knowing how soldiers feel about their position and how to inspire courage or caution. To summarize, Chapter 11, know the 9 types of ground and their implications. Adapt leadership and tactics to each situation. Use knowledge of ground to avoid unnecessary battles. Control communication and supply routes. Inspire troops based on their circumstances. In essence, this chapter teaches that the battlefield is not one static place but a collection of ever-changing conditions. Victory goes to the commander who can see these nuances and respond with skill and insight. Chapter 12. The Attack by Fire. In this chapter, Sun Tzu explores the use of fire as a weapon, not just literally, but also as a metaphor for applying pressure and destruction to the enemy. He begins by explaining the 5 ways to use fire in warfare: setting fire to soldiers' camps, burning supply wagons, setting fire to arsenals and equipment, burning stores of food and provisions, setting fire to the enemy's troops directly. These actions cause chaos, disrupt supply lines, and break the enemy's morale. Sun Tzu emphasizes that fire is a weapon of destruction that must be used wisely and at the right moment. It is not a reckless tool but a precise means to weaken the enemy's resources and willpower. He highlights the importance of timing and weather conditions in employing fire attacks. Wind direction can spread the fire toward or away from targets. Dry or rainy conditions affect how successful a fire attack will be. Fire attacks during the night or early morning can maximize surprise. Sun Tzu also stresses that fire attacks require coordination and planning. They must be part of a larger strategy, complementing other maneuvers. Moreover, he warns that fire can be dangerous to the attacker as well. If mishandled, It can spread uncontrollably or alert the enemy prematurely. This chapter also teaches a broader lesson like fire, other forms of attack, psychological, economic, or technological, should be applied with precision and awareness to cause maximum disruption with minimal risk. Sun Tzu concludes by reminding commanders to use all resources at their disposal, natural elements, terrain, and timing, to overwhelm and outmaneuver the enemy. To summarize Chapter 12, fire can be a powerful weapon to destroy and disrupt. There are 5 key ways to use fire against the enemy. Success depends on timing, weather, and careful planning. Fire attacks must be integrated into an overall strategy. Use natural forces wisely to gain advantage. Ultimately, this chapter teaches us that warfare is not only about physical confrontation, but also about using all tools, including nature itself, to weaken the enemy and secure victory. In this concluding chapter, Sun Tzu reveals one of the most crucial secrets of warfare, the power of intelligence and espionage. He begins by asserting that what enables the wise sovereign and the good general to strike and conquer and achieve things beyond the reach of ordinary men is foreknowledge. This foreknowledge comes from spies, agents who gather vital information about the enemy's plans, strengths, weaknesses, and movements. Sun Tzu classifies spies into 5 categories, each serving a distinct role in intelligence gathering. Local spies, recruited from the enemy's own territory. These spies provide information about the local environment, the mood of the people, and enemy dispositions. Inward spies, placed inside the enemy's government or military structure. They report on internal politics and troop morale. Converted spies, enemy agents who have been turned to work for you, feeding false or misleading information back to their original side. Doomed spies, spies who are sent with false information and are allowed to be captured, thus deceiving the enemy. Surviving spies, agents who return with valuable, truthful information after dangerous missions. Sun Tzu stresses that effective use of spies is not just about gathering facts, but about deception, misinformation, and control. A skilled general can manipulate what the enemy believes, leading them into traps or making them hesitate. He also highlights the need for absolute secrecy and trust within the spy network. The general who manages spies well gains a tremendous advantage. Hence it is that which none in the whole army are more intimate and closer to the sovereign than spies. Without intelligence, an army fights blindly, risking defeat. With good intelligence, a general fights with confidence and clarity. The chapter teaches a broader truth. Knowledge is power. In warfare, information can be more deadly than swords or spears. To summarize Chapter 13, spies provide the critical knowledge needed to outmaneuver the enemy. There are 5 types of spies, each with unique roles. Intelligence work involves deception and misinformation. Effective spy management requires secrecy, trust, and skill. Foreknowledge gained from spies is the key to strategic advantage. This final chapter of The Art of War encapsulates the timeless idea that victory depends not only on strength and tactics, but on the wisdom to gather, interpret, and act on information.